All right, ladies and gentlemen, congratulations. You made it to the last section of notes for Unit 1. All right, so linear equations and expressions. It's a good idea to start reviewing. You do have a test next week. It's a good idea to start reviewing, going back to your notes. What did we do on the first day? What did we do on the second day? Go back and look at that. Today you have an absolute value worksheet. You do need to do all of it. And if you print it off, you'll have 2 pages and you will have to upload both pages to me. So let me know how that goes. So you'll have to take 2 photos and upload 2 photos for me. Thank you very much. Upload to student view. View Dropbox. And again, make sure it's the right Dropbox. It'll say the same thing, absolute value worksheet. On that worksheet, you can check your answers. Because they're all there. I should see work for all of those answers. And a lot of the times it will take a lot of work. So you can't just do one thing and get it done. All right, what does absolute value really mean? So something like this equation here, the absolute value of n, the absolute value of some number is 4. Well, absolute value really says, so in words, this really means the distance some number n is away from 0, AWA1, away from 0 is 4. The distance some number n is away from 0 is 4. So let me draw a picture because I think a picture is worth 1,000 words. Here's a number line. Here's 0. On one side, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And the other side, we have our negative numbers, right? So -1, -2, -3, -4, -5. So we have our positive and negative numbers. And what this is saying is that the distance is 4. Some number is 4 units away from 0. So here's the interesting part. Some number n is 4 units away from 0. So that means it could be 4 units to the right of 0, but it also could be 4 units left of 0. And so there are 2 possible numbers here. 4 is a possible number for n, and -4 is a possible number for n. So n could equal 4 or -4. And this is sort of how you'll see the answers on the worksheet today. This is set notation. These are little curly brackets, and these are just the list of solutions. So there are 2 solutions here. And you can try it out. So if we put 4 in place of the n here, well, the absolute value of 4 is 4. That's what we want. If I put the -4 in place of n, the absolute value of -4 equals 4. That also works. Now, here's the problem. We know this is 4 units away from 0. So that means it could be 4 units to the right. It could be 4 units to the left. The answers are not always going to be opposites, ladies and gentlemen. Do not think that. I want you to check your answers. I want you to frankly look at the answers first. I want you to go through and see that, yes, the first 10 or maybe 8 problems, the answers happen to be opposites. But once the problems get more complicated, you won't get opposite values. You'll get very different numbers. so let's see how that works. Our goal whenever we're solving absolute value equations, and remember, if we're solving absolute value equations, there are always going to be two solutions. Always, always, always. Do not forget, we will test you on this. So two solutions. Now, what we want to do when we're solving absolute value, the best thing to do is always to remember to isolate the absolute value first. Then write two equations. And those two equations are the two equations that represent the distance going to the right of 0 and the equation that represents the distance to the left, which would be the negative. All right, so our absolute value here is alone, isolated on the left. And so we're going to write two equations. So that's going to be x over 4 is equal to the negative 2/3. That's if we went to the left, 2/3 of a unit. So that's the left side gets the left of 0, gets the negative sign. And then right of 0 gets the positive sign. So x over 4 could be positive 2/3. Once you write two equations, you can drop the absolute value, but it's really, really important that you have two equations for each problem. One that represents a distance to the left and one that represents a distance to the right. How do we get x by itself? This says x divided by 4. To undo divide, we're going to multiply both sides by 4. You can think about it as 4 over 1. And think again, that's a reciprocal. So those 4s are going to reduce, and we get x equals. Here we're just going to multiply straight across. Negative 2 times 4 is negative 8. 3 times 1 is 3. So there's one solution. On this side, again, I'm going to multiply both sides by 4. Times by 4 and divide by 4 cancel out. And I get x equals, straight across, 2 times 4 is 8. 3 times 1 is 3. So on this one, we do happen to get plus or minus 8/3. And you can write it this way. You can leave it like this. They mean the same thing. This is fine. Let's look at letter B. Let's see if we get the same thing. So again, our absolute value is already isolated. It's all alone. And we know that it's 19 units from 0. Well, that's going to be 19 units left, which would land at negative 19. Or it could be 19 units to the right. I'm going to write the word units there because that's kind of a nice reminder. It could be 19 units to the right. So everything inside, oops, don't change your signs. Could be 19 units to the right, places us at positive 19. All right, remember, this is 19 units from 0. And now we can solve these two equations. So really today is just more practice solving equations. This is 100% of what you need to know how to do, solving equations. All right, let's go ahead and solve this pretty quickly. We're going to add 3 to both sides. Leaves me with negative 2b equals. We have 19 negatives and 3 positives. They fight and a couple die, and we're left with 16 negatives. They win. We're going to go ahead and divide both sides by negative 2. So we get b equals negative divided by negative, positive. Over here on the right, I'm going to go ahead and add 3. We're going to get the same thing. 19 plus 3, 19, 22, 22. Not going to get the same thing, are we? So b equals, positive divided by negative is negative 11. 2 goes into 22 11 times. All right, so you can see on this one, we have two different answers. X equals negative 11 and 8. You can write them like this with commas. If it's a plus or minus, you can use a plus or minus. But you can see whenever we have more than one term here, we're going to get different answers. So don't think it's just always plus or minus, plus or minus. No, no, no. That's not right. I've often heard students who said, our teacher just said you can just drop the absolute value. And I just hit myself over the head every time I hear that, because that's what happens when algebra is taught in like 8th grade or 5th grade or 6th grade. You get teachers who don't quite know this math. They might not be secondary certified, and it's a problem. Okay. Over here, what's the difference in these questions that we have? How are these different than what we just did? That's right, there's this extra stuff here. We need to isolate the absolute value. We cannot do anything unless that is isolated. I mean, and that's the rule. The rule is if the absolute value is alone, then it represents a distance away from 0. But as it is, we've got some competing distances here, so we want to make sure all those distance units are on the same side. So I'm going to go ahead and move this 5 to the right. Positive 5 and negative 5 go away. And now my equation is absolute value of 2x minus 3 is equal to 14 minus 5, which is 9. Now I'm 9 units from 0. But remember, that could be a distance of 9 units to the left of 0. To the left of 0 are negative numbers. So that'd be a negative 9. Or it could be 9 units to the right of 0. So that would be 2x minus 3 is 9, positive 9. And now we can solve. This is the important part, people. Can you set this up properly? Units to the left gets the negative, units to the right gets the positive. That's it. What if your absolute value was equal to negative 9? Is that possible? That would not be possible. You think that here, but that's not quite what's going to happen. I'll show you. All right, we're going to go ahead and add 3 to both sides. So we get 2x is equal to negative 9 plus 3. The negatives win by 6. We're going to go ahead and divide by 2. Negative 6 divided by 2 is negative 3. Over here, we're going to, again, add 3. Positive 3, negative 3 is 0. 9 plus 3, 9, 10, 11, 12. Divide by 2. 12 divided by 2 is 6. Let me talk about that. You know, I'm doing these things very quickly. What is the number one reason students fail algebra? Multiplying. Multiplying is the number one reason students fail algebra. And it's still the number one reason they fail algebra too. So I ask you a question. Do you know your multiplication chart? I want to know, do you know all your 12 by 12 times tables? Because you should. And if you don't, go and play some online math multiplying games. There's a lot of them out there. You can just Google math multiplication facts game. You need to know your multiplication facts. So there you go. All right, again here on this letter D, the very last one today, we again need to isolate this absolute value. It has to be by itself. So we have a couple of things to get rid of. And first, I want to remind you, this is 3 minus this whole group. Well, there's a 1 in there. Anytime you have a negative to the left, it's a negative 1. So let's think about that. We want to go ahead and get rid of this positive 3 because, again, it's a unit distance. So we want to move it over here. So we're going to subtract 3 to get started. So we have a negative out in front, and that's a negative 1, if you will, times the absolute value of 1/3 f plus 2. Negative 9 and a negative 3 makes a negative 9, 10, 11, 12. Right? Lots and lots of negatives. They don't go to war. They're on the same team. They just join forces and get bigger. All right. Now this is negative 1 times this whole thing. Guess what we get to do? We get to divide everything by negative 1. Now you can see we aren't actually having a negative distance here, though that could happen and the answer might be no solution. So if that weren't there, we cannot have an absolute value that has a negative distance. So if it did look like that, this is no solution. There is no value that would give us a negative result. When it pops out of the absolute value, it has to be positive. So when it's isolated, it has to be a positive distance. However, we have negatives, so they're going to end up canceling out. Whoops. So we have the absolute value of 1/3 f plus 2 equals positive 12. So now that absolute value is fully isolated. So this is 12 units from 0. And remember, that could be 12 units to the left. So 1/3 f plus 2 is equal to negative 12. Left of 0 are the negative units. Or it could be 12 units to the right. So 1/3 f plus 2 equals positive 12. To the right of 0 are positive numbers. So go ahead and solve. We're going to subtract 2. 1/3 f equals a whole lot of negatives here. There's 14 negatives. Now, how do we get rid of the fraction? Multiply by the reciprocal. Anytime you have a fraction, reciprocal, when it's a product. So the multiplicative inverse is we're going to multiply by 3/1. That's the easy thing to do. And those cancel out, leaving f. This is straight across. Ooh, 14 times 3. Is that 52? It's bigger than 12. I don't know that. 14 times 3. 42, yeah. Did I say 52? No, it's 42. Negative 42. Negative times positive 3 is negative. All right. To the right-hand side here, we have negative 2 from both sides. 1/3 f is equal to positive 12 and 2 negatives. 12 minus 2 is 10. And then again, how do we get rid of this 1/3? We're going to multiply by the reciprocal. Multiply by 3/1. 3 times 1/3 is 1. It cancels out. So we get f is equal to 10 times 3, which is 30. All right, ladies and gentlemen, please, again, let me know if you have any questions. I'm happy to help. This worksheet will take some time, but it is very, very good practice for solving equations. Please let me know if you have any questions. You maybe, you can, I'm not checking your homework for 100% accuracy. I don't have that kind of time. But if there's one you get wrong, highlight the ones that you get wrong. You can still turn it in. You'll still get full credit, even if a few are incorrect. If half the worksheet is incorrect, you will only get half credit. If you've only shown the work for half of the worksheet, then you will only get half credit. But if you've missed 1 or 2 questions because you made a couple of mistakes, it's not a big deal. So you can highlight them and go back to them later. You can still submit. But please check your answers and look at it first. So you can see to yourself that, only the first couple have solutions that are opposite. All right. So all the rest of the solutions are different. Folks, have a great day.